Okay. This next challenge coin, or collector coin, is issued by the Buffalo and Erie County Naval and Military Park, and it is commemorative for one of the museum ships on display there, the destroyer USS The Sullivans DD-537.
Okay, and here we have the challenge coin from the Buffalo Naval Park. This is one of their museum ships. One of their museum ships they have on display. This is USS The Sullivans DD-537, which DD stands for destroyer. And this is one of the few Fletcher class destroyers still in existence in the world. And here we have the flip side of the Sullivan's coin, and that's the new Buffalo and Erie County Navy and Military Park logo with the three ships: Little Rock, Croker, and the Sullivans, superimposed over a U.S. flag.
Okay, USS The Sullivans DD-537. It's a Fletcher class destroyer. It's named in honor of the five Sullivan brothers: George, Francis, Joseph, Madison, and Albert, all who were killed when their ship, the USS Juno, was sunk during the naval battle of Guadalcanal in November 1942. Side note: the naval battle of Guadalcanal was one of like a dozen naval engagements or naval battles that occurred during the campaign to retake or liberate the island of Guadalcanal from the Japanese, which was started in August 1942 and did not end until February 1943. Most of the Japanese soldiers left on Guadalcanal at that point were pretty much too sick, too weak, or too badly injured to continue fighting, and so they were easily overrun. I think this is one of the few times when Japanese were captured in large numbers during the campaign, during the Pacific War. Anyway, and another side note: the fact that Sullivan is named for the five Sullivan brothers is unique in the history of the U.S. Navy. This is the first time that this has ever happened, that a ship would be named for multiple people. And this only happened one other time, and that is the current USS The Sullivans, which is a guided missile destroyer. It's the only two times this has ever happened in the history of the Navy. But okay, USS The Sullivans, as mentioned before, is a Fletcher class destroyer. Her hull was laid down on 10 October 1942 at the San Francisco shipyard of the Bethlehem Shipbuilding Corporation, originally named the Putnam. Now, after the naval battle of Guadalcanal, she is renamed Sullivan. And this name carries on for several weeks. And then President Franklin Roosevelt issues an order that the ship should be named for the Sullivans to express the fact that this name is being given to all five Sullivan brothers. And that becomes official on 6 February 1943. The ship is launched on 4 April 1943 with the sponsor of Mrs. Thomas F. Sullivan, who also christens the ship. Now, that Mrs. Sullivan is, of course, the mother of the five Sullivan brothers. And the Sullivans would be commissioned at the end of September 1943 and go through a shakedown cruise, and then right before Christmas of 1943 would be transferred to the Pacific Fleet. She would serve throughout the remaining year and a half or so of the war, receiving 9 battle stars, In that time frame, she would continue service up to and through the Korean War. She would get 2 more battle stars during Korea. And then she would be taken and assigned to the 6th Fleet and be designated as a training ship, remaining in that service in that role until January of 1965, where she is taken out of commission and transferred to the reserve. She remains there for 12 years. So in 1977, she is stricken. Well, she's taken out and processed for donation to the Buffalo and Erie County Naval and Military Park, Buffalo, New York, and is finally stricken from the Navy rolls in December 1974. Probably around the time she was actually officially transferred. Anyway, and once she was transferred to the Buffalo Park, she has been open as a museum ship pretty much since that time. There's been a few interruptions. The COVID outbreak would shut down the park for a few weeks in 2020. And she recently had a incident where she was partially flooded and sunk at the quayside or at dockside in April of 2022. Okay, a few notes. Again, Sullivan's is a Fletcher-class destroyer. Her badge is a circle with a shamrock in the middle and a Fletcher-class destroyer silhouette superimposed over the shamrock. And it's surrounded by the words USS The Sullivans in an upward arc over the shamrock, and the hull number DD-537 in a downward arc underneath the shamrock, and there's a border between the wording and the shamrock. And at the bottom of this border, it has the Sullivan Brothers motto, "We stick together." Now, this Fletcher-class destroyer, she would displace 2,050 long tons or 2,080 tons. Her length would be 376 feet 6 inches or 114.76 meters. Her beam or width at the widest point would be 39 feet 8 inches or 12.09 meters. Her draft, or how far down below the waterline she extended, would be 17 feet 9 inches or 5.41 meters. She had 4 oil-fired boilers producing 45,000 kilowatts. She was now all that power would be transferred to two steam turbines, or all that heat would boil the water into steam turbines. Each one would power a shaft that would turn a propeller. So there are 2 propellers. Sullivan's is capable of 30. In peak condition, Sullivan's is capable of 35 knots or 65 kilometers per hour or 40 miles per hour. Her range at roughly 8 knots would be 6,500 nautical miles or 12,000 kilometers or 7,500 miles. Her complement was 336 men and officers. And her armament, well, there's 2 armament layouts. There's as built, and then what she had when she was put into mothballs, or put into the museum ship. Or an original armament was 5-inch, 130 millimeter, 38 caliber guns. Now 38 caliber is the multiplier for the barrel length. You take the width of the diameter of the shell, multiply it by this multiplier, and that gives you the barrel length. She also had 10 40 millimeter or 1.6 inch Bofors anti-aircraft guns in twin mounts, so there would be 5 of those. 7 20mm or .79-inch Oerlikon double anti-aircraft cannons in single mounts, and say 10 21-inch torpedo tubes, or or 530mm tubes arranged in 2 batteries of 5 and 6 K-gun depth charges and 2 depth charge tracks. She's modified somewhat during service. She ends up with 4 5-inch 38s, or 5-inch 38 caliber guns, 2 3-inch or 76mm 50 caliber guns, arranged in a double mount, 4 40mm Bofors anti-aircraft guns in dual mounts, so there are 2 of those, 4 20mm Oerlikon anti-aircraft cannons, again in dual mounts, so there's 2 of those with 2 guns each, 2 Mark 32 triple torpedo tubes, or 6 tubes, 2 Hedgehog launchers, which are a forward-firing mortar type arrangement that propels smaller depth charges in front of the ship, and 1 depth charge track. And that's how pretty much how she is when she's mothballed. Okay, some personal extra notes on the family and left out in other places. Okay, the Sullivan brothers were the children of Thomas and Alida Sullivan of Waterloo, Iowa. Alida Sullivan, as I mentioned before, was should have mentioned before, is the woman who christened, this was considered the sponsor for the Fletcher class destroyer, USS The Sullivans DD-537. The boys were George Thomas Sullivan, 27, Francis Henry Frank Sullivan, 26, Joseph Eugene Joe Sullivan, 24, Madison Abel Matt Sullivan, 23, Albert Leo Al Sullivan, 20. Now, in addition to the 5 brothers, there is also a girl, Genevieve, who at the time, on December 7th, was dating a man, Bill Ball, who was in the crew of USS Arizona, sunk Pearl Harbor, and he was killed. This apparently prompts the brothers to want to go back and enlist or to the other 2 boys, George and Frank, who have already been in the Navy, separated out to go back in. So George and Frank re-enlist, and the others enlist for the first time. And Genevieve would later serve in the Waves, which is Women's U.S. Navy Auxiliary Corps. Okay. Now, in addition to the sister and the parents, the boys are survived by Joe, survived by fiancé Margaret Charles, Matt, survived by fiancé Beatrice Imperato, and Al was married and had a son, Jimmy, prior to his enlistment. And anyway, after they're killed, President Franklin Roosevelt issued the order changing the name of Putnam, later Sullivan, to the Sullivans. Also sends a letter of condolence to the parents, and Pope Pius XII also sends a condolence letter, which includes a silver religious medal, and a rosary, along with this message of regret. There are several other letters of condolence, obviously. Now the Sullivans were serving on the Juno due to the Navy violating its own policy against siblings serving together. This was not a strict policy at the time. After the Juno, the Sullivan brothers are killed along with several other brothers. There's like 36 brothers on the Juno. This suddenly is very tight. You don't violate it after this. Starting, when 1943 starts, this is a hard and fast rule, never violated. And there was another set of brothers, the Rogers brothers. This is one of the 36 of those. There were 3 of them on the Juno. I've heard in various stories 3 or 4, but 2 of them had transferred off prior to this battle, so they were safe. And the story is maybe that 2 of the Sullivan brothers were transferred off after this battle. But no, the ship couldn't make it back, and they were all killed, so they couldn't transfer off. So anyway, as mentioned a couple of times before, Alita Sullivan sponsors the ship Sullivans DD-537. Joe, Al's son Jimmy, later served on it probably in the 60s. Due to his fact he wouldn't have been old enough to have served on it before that. So this is probably his service is probably around the time when definitely is during the time when the 6th Fleet is a training ship. And Jimmy's daughter Kelly would christen the Arleigh Burke class USS The Sullivans DD-537 DDG-68. These are the only 2 ships that have ever been named for 2 or more individuals. Most of the, like the destroyers and the destroyer escorts, the frigates, 1 submarine, and several of especially the modern aircraft carriers, are named for a single individual. So these are the only 2 named for a group of people. Definitely, as I say, they're all named for those. And anyway, okay. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this little presentation on the Sullivan's collector coin and the history of the ship itself that the coin represents. And this is not anywhere near everything I can tell you about the ship. This is just a few minutes. Anyway, have a nice day.